everybody. Hope you had 2 days of discussing data and policy and its implications. And what we'd like to discuss in this panel is a bit around this following question. Who's seen this? Sam Altman, please don't ask, please don't say thank you, because it's costing them millions in energy, and that's what we're talking about. So the increase of data is growing and growing, but it's also costing a hell of a lot of energy. So what's the implications? At the same time, we also see data doing a lot of good for environment. I just want to share with you this climate GTP. It's the second foundational model in Europe. It's coming out of the Netherlands, and it's the largest foundational model with data on climate. So if you want to do research on climate change, go to Climate GPT, and it will help you look at data. But how are we going to make this happen? How are we going to make certain that all these AI engines and all the other technology is still working? So we're going to talk about digital transition. We're also going to talk about the energy transition. And we're going to do that with the following organizations. So we have an energy company. We have Top Sector Energie, which we'll explain later. Nieuwsport, as part of the International Press Center, Nieuwsport of the Dutch government, Dutch Data Center Association, House of ESG, and the Dutch government represented in the panel and moderators. These are the people there. So what I'd now like to do is see if we can link the logos to the people. So, no, well, not. I'm just going to, Karen, you're up there. Which logos do you represent today?
Yeah. Thank you very much for being here this Friday afternoon on a hot summer day. My name is Karen van der Zanden, and actually I'm, there are two logos on this previous slide which belong to me. One is ePort or Nieuwsport. It's just located here within the Dutch Parliament. It's a foundation which already for I think 15 years or something like that is taking care of the discussion between Dutch Parliament members and, in a broader sense, the technology sector. And I'll do that together with your moderator as well, Frits Bussemaker. We're both in this
board. Yeah.
In the board. And one of the other things I'm doing is House of ESG. It's my own company, creating content and training and a lot of other things, and a community with regard to ESG, sustainability, compliance, and all this. And I'm more or less in the field of sustainable digitalization for the past 2 years.
I think you're modest there, but we'll cover that in the conversation, what your background is. Stijn.
Yeah.
Which logos do you represent?
One logo only, Dutch Data Center Association.
Then you can keep it short.
So I'm the director of the Trade Association for Data Centers in the Netherlands. For the past 11 years, we represent the industry. We represent around 95% of the capacity in the Netherlands. And we are liaising with governments, other organizations on subjects of sustainability, energy, of course, employment, education, spatial planning, and also do that only in a European way. So I'm also board member of the European Data Center Association. When we started 11 years ago, it's a fairly new sector. There were 3 trade associations. Now there are 25. So you see everybody's organizing with the development of the sector as a whole. On the subject of sustainability, very much focused on energy efficiency, circularity, grid integration. So anything that we can do to also be good citizens, but also help the energy transition to accelerate.
Thank you. Inge.
Well, I represent just also one logo, and that's Alliander, which is a national grid operator in the Netherlands with almost 6 million customers. And I'm responsible for the digital strategy of Alliander. And sustainability standardization, artificial intelligence is all part of our digital strategy and much more. So I can represent the practical side of a grid operator.
Yeah, thank you. Last.
Claire Groosman, topsector energy, or in English, Energy Innovation NL. It's an institution financed by the Dutch government to stimulate innovation for the energy transition. And I'm responsible for the program Digital, which both does stimulation of digital technologies to speed up the energy transition, but also looks at what are the preconditions of that are necessary to get that digital energy transition going, like data governance, data sharing in the energy field, but also cyber resilience in the energy domain. Well, the Alliander logo, it does get my heart beating a little bit faster, because I was working there for 12 years. So yeah, okay. A little bit Alliander still at heart.
Good. Thank you. That's the panel. Briefly introduce myself. As Karen mentioned, one of the co-founders of ePort, to link the discussion on the impact of digitalization to the Dutch society, and I work part-time for the Dutch government. So that's my background. We're going to talk about rethinking digital sustainability, title of this session. Now, in preparation of today's panel discussion, we came up with the following statements. I'll give you a minute to read this, because we have the option to select one and discuss that. But also, I'd like to hear from the audience if you have something you'd like to discuss with this panel, a question. Given their introduction, please share so we can address your issues as well. Anybody, does anybody have a strong opinion on one of these statements?
We do, yeah.
We do, yeah. Yeah, we do expect and some audience participation, which means that some might be able to call out to somebody. So please share your thoughts. Good. So it's going to be number 2. Who of the panel should I ask to give us a first statement? And Stijn, I'm looking at you, to be honest.
Of course. Well, I think it's a no-brainer. And it's actually something that we, together with the grid operators in the Netherlands, have proposed to our government. But in practice, it's like very good to help congestion, to soften congestion, to help stabilize the grid. But in reality, if you look at energy policies, environmental permits, this is almost, you get stuck very quickly. The goal to sort of like accelerate the energy transition is actually halted by this. So the policies that we have are sort of like really holding this back. Again, a no-brainer. It makes it cheaper. It makes it the grid better. But what we see now is that we cannot progress further here in the Netherlands because we are halted by regulation, which does not allow to make this a reality.
Okay, Stijn, before I go to the next panel member, I want to clarify something. You mentioned, okay, policy holding it back. Can you specify which policy you're referring to? Can you make it explicit?
Well, there are a couple. One of them is we have these data centers need to provide continuous IT support. So there are places where you put your IT, governments, companies put their IT in, and these facilities need to be up 24/7. So if the power goes out from the grid, we have emergency power, diesel generators, gas generators, even hydrogen generators at this moment to take on the load and maintain that continuity. We're sort of like an insurance company for the internet. And if you want to use the emergency power, the flexible power, which is actually needed because we have a grid in the Netherlands which is 50% filled with green energy. So if there's no wind, no solar, we will see a drop on the grid. So we need flexible power to stabilize the grid. To use the existing flexible power is actually very good because then you can maintain the flow of green energy, and you can switch off larger power plants by using geographically diverse emergency power. But we can only use the emergency power for our own and not for the grid, because that's in the environmental permit. There is a 500 hours rule, which says above 500 hours, we cannot use it anymore because then your permit goes away. These are things that are really holding us back. But also on, for instance, we have hydrogen power in some data centers. We cannot expand the capacity to help the grid because we are not allowed to put more hydrogen on site because permits do not allow that. So there's a lot of things that are holding us back in that sense.
Stijn, okay, Claire, you
No,
immediately wanted to
I
jump
have
in.
a reaction to
Yep.
what Stijn says because are there any are there any players now that are not abiding by the rules and doing it anyway? Because it's a no-brainer when you speak of it like this, and all parties involved are willing and able. But are there any?
No, we cannot allow us to get rid of our permit, because then we have a real problem.
Yeah. Okay. So
and we have SLAs with our customers, the government, for instance, and they won't allow us to break the law.
Okay. Inge, any reaction from Alliander on this?
Well, this is like the energy system we're talking about, and I do think it can help because we want to create a decentralized energy system. So this can help, but as Stijn said, policy doesn't allow it, and it's not. To be honest, the energy transition, it's a very, very complex problem, and it can't be solved with a very easy solution, of course, because it's how do you say that? Complex. Well, thank you. So that's my comment on it.
Okay.
To be honest, yeah.
Karen, is it as in your background looking at sustainable energy? Is it as or is digitalization? Is it the policy as Stijn mentioned, or also other things happening?
Well, I think I agree with Stijn that we have a lot of regulations and policies which are not we are contradictory. We are not these. Well, it's a complex transition. So one is the energy transition. We all need to go to more sustainable energy, and it's solar panels or it's wind energy. But where is the energy, the source of this energy, and where are we going to use it? So we also need to rethink maybe how are we going to take care of this infrastructure. And so there's one thing where we should, I think, invest, or we need to invest in more in the energy grid, and we need to work together with the data centers, and actually we need to do this all. But next to that, we also need to think about companies, for example, where we have solar panels on the rooftops, and maybe think of for compute purposes or smaller large language models on AI of these. Where can you put your compute also next to where also the energy is coming from? This is not also the holy grail, because the energy grid and the congestion is really a big danger actually also for our economy and for our growth, because we need to invest in it, in our infrastructure. We need to invest in digital technologies. So we have both these big transitions, and actually I believe that we need all of the measurements to get this solved, and we need at least to work together and to get some policies and regulations which are contradictory to get them removed.
I totally agree. So it's and, not either or. In the past, we had some like playing room to experiment with these kinds of solutions, and there's a lot of sound in the energy domain that asks for this kind of regulatory leeway or regulatory loote, we call it in Dutch, where we can experiment with these kinds of solutions.
So you're advocating a regulatory sandbox.
Yes. Yes, and these kind of and maybe even on a local level within certain municipalities, that would be an option to experiment with this local, doing this locally, like Karen mentioned. So matching the demand for energy from a data center, from a smaller data center, with the supply of local sustainable energy, where there's not these permits that are damaging this development.
Okay. So thank you, by the way. You represent the local council. First of all, are you happy, or what's your feedback, your reflection on these results?
I'm mostly here as an academic and not as a politician, but
you mentioned it.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I think the difficulty is, I think, as you also described, on the one hand, we need a more decentralized energy grid, also to make sure it's able to resist, for example, also outside pressures. With the whole geopolitical landscape, it's all becoming more complex. So you don't want a situation that occurred, of course, on the Iberian Peninsula a few weeks ago. On the other hand, we also know that the sources of clean energy are not at the same places as they are being produced, as you said. At the same time, there will also be a need for increased electricity production, especially to enhance the industrial base, which is, well, we see a lot of companies leaving the Netherlands, even though we actually need them for example, for the defense industry. So we have gotten ourselves into a very complex issue, and I think locally what we experience most is just the uncertainty whether we can build houses, but can we provide them with enough electricity? And I think there are also some interesting experiments going on. I read in the newspaper the other day in Utrecht, where they all the companies and all the businesses and all the households who are going to form a new neighborhood are actually obliged to become part of an energy corporation, because if everyone would just register individually, there would be not enough electricity. So these are also, I think, the kind of, maybe they are suboptimal solutions, but they are the kind of solutions you need, because if the alternative is, well, no power, then you rather force people to be a bit more creative in their power usage, I guess.
No, you're absolutely right. We do a lot of pilots, so to say. Also in Arnhem, we have this living area where we use batteries, we use electric vehicles, as well as solar panels, in order to create a living space and build houses without expanding the grid. And that's very good, because if we expand the grid, we have to lay down, I think, 100,000 kilometers of cable in the next few years. We have to open 1 out of 3 streets. So that's a lot of build, but it also costs a lot of money. And we simply don't have the capacity. We don't have the materials. We don't have the electricians to do all that. And then electricity becomes, or at least the connection becomes, very expensive. So it's very important to create solutions that can that can expand, not expand the grid, but to have more loadage on the cables without expanding the grid. And you mentioned a few very good examples. But now the challenge is to scale this, because now it's all pilots still. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, Claire, then Stijn. and
You-
then I'm going to go back to the audience.
You said these might be suboptimal solutions. I don't think they're suboptimal. I think they're the new reality. So we have a situation where there's a large production of energy, sustainable energy, green energy, and a large demand, industry, data centers. But there's also a whole decentralized system, and we don't want to use the local grid, the national grid, to transport that to other places. We can use it there. We can use it there with local businesses, housing, electric vehicles, and also smaller data center facilities. To get back on topic, but so it's and it's not so it's not a suboptimal. It's our new reality.
Yeah, and another example of smart use is actually also think outside of the box. We recently had the outage of Heathrow, where an airport went down. It caused mayhem in the UK. We had Portugal and Spain. But one of the things that happened was that there's now a discussion, actually a working relationship between a data center in the Schiphol area and Schiphol itself, with to connect the emergency power directly to the grid of Schiphol. They have their own grid to actually use the excess emergency power that we have to prevent that Schiphol goes down in the possibility what happened at Heathrow. So that is basically an initiative that is taken outside sort of like the regular sort of like DSOs and TSOs, grid operators, to have direct lines to actually hold up facilities and to create more stability in the Netherlands as a whole.
Okay. Now, thank you, Stijn. Now, smart use, you could say, can help if policy allows it. As is a data and policy conference today, suggestion was we need a regulatory sandbox. We have to check if it works. Is there anybody who would disagree?
I am definitely a no. Maybe I was too early to raise my hand. I don't disagree, but I think we don't have a shortage of pilots, right? I think a lot of examples mentioned. The difficulty is really scaling up, scaling in, replicating these pilots. And with regulatory sandboxes, I think they're compelling for new technologies. But in these solutions, which are a combination of governance, of regulation, of technology, there's much more needed than a regulatory sandbox. Because I think if we prove that a solution like connecting extra capacity to Schiphol works, if that would be subject to regulation if not allowed, and you try it out in a pilot and it works, and the pilot ends, then you're still confronted with limiting regulation. So what is actually necessary in addition to the regulatory sandboxes are also shorter cycles between policymaking and regulation. And I think that's where data comes in, right? You learn from the experiment, you can translate uncertainty towards risk, and you can also then change regulation based on these new insights, such that these pilots can also be scaled up throughout the country. Because if not, and you have some areas which are more successful in these regulatory sandboxes scaling up, it also increases the risk of a less just transition, because these solutions might work faster in certain regions, not in other regions. So areas will also there will be bigger differences between different geographic areas. So regulatory sandboxes, yes, but also in addition, shorter cycles between learning from those regulatory sandboxes and the policymaking and regulatory process.
I totally agree. I really don't know how, because I feel responsible to make things work, to get all those that data from those experiments, but how to get them to the policymakers And in the talk in the panel before this, the digital savviness of our policymakers in certain areas is also lacking, and therefore they don't really see how they can interpret the data if they even get it. So organizing that data flow from experiments to our policymakers, and then being able to translate that data to sensible policies or regulatory changes. Well, we can talk about that for a long time, because I think there's a lot of challenges there.
Great. Okay, thank you. I'm going to challenge the panel discussion to pick the second topic. Is anything, anybody you feel strong about? I really like to discuss these statements. First one, who?
Number 4, because
Number
it's
4.
nice, short and sweet. But it's also regarding that we're feeling that we're switching to a different system.
Your wish is granted. Number 4 is on the board. You had the mic. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, bigger is better. That's in the field of data. That seems to be the prerogative. Whereas we've been talking about the data policy from the EU, where we are going more to a federated system, but that's exactly what's going on in the energy field. So we're going to a more distributed and federated system in the energy system, whilst we are also having a central system and a large system. So it's, I think, where it really gets scary and where it really gets complicated is in connecting those two, because there's a lot of initiatives on a local level. There's a lot of good transitions on a national, on a broader level. But connecting those two scales, that's a very difficult task.
Okay, good. That's one perspective, because it is an ambiguous statement. It leaves room for interpretation. And Karen, I'd like to actually come back to you. What are your thoughts when you see this statement? What are the things we need to think about when we talk about scaling and needing to fit?
Yeah, I think we really need to. We're living in a world where besides this energy grid and the sustainable energy and digitalization, also we have also geopolitical things to think about. So there are several things in infrastructure and in decision and in IT and in to take into account, which are sustainability, but also sovereignty or security. So if we look at digitalization, we need to think, what is this type of data? Where are we going to store it? How are we going to compute? So what is really very secretive? What do we need to really protect? What can be more in more open space or more on open source side? So these kind of things we need to think about. And it's also balancing, because this is about the energy grid. This is about the supply side. That's one side of the medal, because the other side is a demand side. We need to think also, where do we we now have this nice slogan from the Dutch government that we cannot use energy during 4 and 9 of the day. But if we take this further and we are able to really, with AI, for example, to really steer also our demand much more, those are solutions we really need to think about, because we need to end the supply and the demand side to have smaller and distributed and federated solutions next to these large infrastructure investments.
Okay, thank you. So Stijn, data centers, how often does data also get deleted from these data centers? Because that's immediately what I think about when I look at this.
We don't know. The customer may decide for themselves.
Okay, but can you guess? Absolutely not.
No, well, yeah, it depends on type of data centers. If data is stored or not. It's very difficult for a facility to say to a customer or hear from a customer data needs to be stored or not stored. It's not our.
Yeah.
We provide power, and that's why if you look at so like this statement, I think most of the time it needs to scale because scaling is much more efficient than not scaling. We have seen that the last 15 years, if you move it to a cloud and you put it in a very large data center, it saves a lot of energy, and therefore we have maintained the energy use fairly stable worldwide. Only recently with the AI developments, it's starting to go up. But also there, large language models, you do that in very large data centers because it's much more efficient. And that you put these large data centers in places where they fit, that's of course very good. You put them in the Middle East or in Scandinavia where there's a lot of power, because that's the most efficient. But skill is I think extremely important, and there are just facts that you need to follow. If you want to save energy, you need skill.
Okay, I'll come back with a counter argument, but you wanted to react, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to react. Of course, you are not responsible for people who delete their data, but I think we do know that I think 80 or 90% of the data is dark data, which is not being used.
Could you give a definition of dark data?
Data which is not being used, which is just there. And I think I agree with you on scaling is good and it can save energy, but I also think we have to think about fit for purpose, because scaling is not the answer to everything, especially with a decentralized energy grid.
No, I'm just thinking just for argument's sake. I mean, anybody can go to YouTube and just upload as many videos of cats if you want, and that upload costs energy. Shouldn't we just make it? Let's say, should we put a price if we provide that? Now it's free of charge.
Data is very cheap.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. I don't think that's a really strange way of thinking, to be honest, to make it more.
Yeah, I think you're right, Frits. If the data is cheap, so we can endlessly just use it, but we need to think about it. Where and how do we use it?
We can endlessly use it at the time that we want it. And not per se the time that it's most logical to have that compute going.
I'm not against what you're saying, but we are the facilities. We rent out equipment, or we rent out space to our customers. Just like does Alliander has a saying in I want to be to use energy only for that and not for that purpose. Mm-hmm. That's not their role. Our role is to provide power.
But
I believe that's not the discussion here.
Security and cooling.
But on the other hand, like Stijn, because yes, but if you're in a hotel, you cannot also put on the shower the whole day, or you're also requested to clean up your towels. So even if you can say, well, just I book a room and whatever, it's not my responsibility what they're doing in this room. But well, maybe we can think about how can we, your clients or everybody's using these data centers to incentivize them to clean it up or to think about this data. Because I agree, it's not you can't force your customers to do that. But I think with all the technology and AI, maybe you can think of solutions to provide this cleaning up and to make them aware and to incentivize them or to put a price on it or something else.
So just two comments. Firstly, there's no conversation about spatial limitations as well, especially because in the Netherlands, that's one of the biggest problems, right? You can't expand and scale up on everything because you all are spatially limited. And it would be nice to hear that conversation from the panel also and just comment on that. But the second comment that I wanted to make was that is data really cheap, or is it that it doesn't reflect the actual cost of the environment and the other costs that are being exported outside the Netherlands. So is this that our economic model is crashing into our environmental limitations and that we just haven't accounted for that?
Okay.
Yeah, I think you said it really beautifully. We couldn't have said it better than that. That's really the difficulty. It's really also very difficult to put a price on it, to get really the footprint of data and of technology. And yeah, we are working on that, but it's a very difficult issue. But at least the awareness with regard to the subject is rising now. And yeah.
Space you meant public space, I assume. It's very true because sometimes, well, you have to make like, if you want to have more data centers that take space, and maybe you need more middenspanningsruimte. What is it called in English? I have no idea. The mid-level voltage transformers, that takes up a few football fields of space. So that's a very huge space, and you have to think about: do you want to build that to facilitate another data center, or do you want to build it to create new homes for people, for example? That's a very difficult.
Yes, I was hoping that you say that. Let me comment. Just some facts. There are 350 hectares of data centers in the Netherlands. There are 2 million hectares of sort of like agricultural land. So looking at data centers, we're very, very small. The harbor of Rotterdam is 12,000 hectares. The Westland next to The Hague is, I think, also 20,000 hectares of glass greenhouses. So 350 hectares, that's 4 sort of like farms. If it doubles, it's still nothing. So spatial is not a problem. And if you build homes, these homes will be connected to the internet. And all these people in these houses will use the internet on their phones, on their iPads, on their laptops. And you need where they connect to data centers. So if you build new homes, you build more data centers. So I think that is also something that people just like, it's in the cloud. It's on the ground. It's metal. It's a building. It has gensets. People are working there. It's in Google in Groningen. 700 people work there every day. It's the largest employer of North Groningen. But they are there because we are all using it in our houses.
Wow, bold statement. If we build houses, we build data centers. I like that one.
Just one small comment on the spatial issue, because there are developments in local authorities to make sure that there's energy grid knowledge and energy engineering knowledge within the spatial planner of municipalities and provinces. So there is that's regardless of the data center space, but for the energy infrastructure space, there's sounds of more integrating that and not having that pillared. I was wondering whether, because we have all these energy and data center users in the room here, and I can imagine, I think you are all quite data intensive users because you do research. Is there for you a intensive or
We say it in Dutch.
incentive? Thank you. An incentive to be able to shift your data demand or your the time, or maybe even the place where you do your compute. Is there anybody who wants to comment on that? Because we have the tenant of your activity, but you are all the end users of that data center, so you have a responsibility as well.
Okay, so who's a researcher here?
Well, I don't use a lot of data, but also I see a bit of a tension with regulations. For us at my university, we, for example, have a rule to keep data we collect for 10 years. So if I collect some interviews or some other data, I have to keep it for reasons of reproducibility if somebody else wants to look back at it. So there's also a rule from my institution to have that data there, even if I don't need it anymore.
I was just wondering whether, to what extent you can compare it also with the discussions about the use of plastic. It's almost for free. It's way too cheap. The same for water. We are going to have huge water problems in the Netherlands. I would compare, okay, data. It's very it's non-limitative, so to say. But at the same time, yeah. So what? You can still think in different manners about it.
Okay, so everybody who has now unlimited use on their mobile phone, we need to just regulate that and stop it.
No, it's not that we. Yes, you need to be conscious about how much energy you use, but it's also becoming more and more relevant when you use. So if there is power available and with batteries and upcoming battery capacity, that's going to be more flattened. But we are also going to a situation where we want to use the energy that is produced locally in a local way when it's available, because that's the most efficient use of the energy. So processes and compute loads and that sort of thing that can be shifted to the moment that the energy, the green energy is available. That's part of the solution. And we are all responsible for that.
I was wondering if that's really true, because the data centers are connected as well. There's always power somewhere in the world. Does it really matter whether you run your large language model in The Hague or somewhere nearby, or maybe, I don't know, use southern France because the sun is shining there? Like, is it really the user that needs to make the decision what's the good timing, or is it which data center you switch on?
I don't know whether Stijn wants to comment on that.
Well, yeah, you have to follow the sun principle, which is there's a lot of talk about it, but it's actually data centers are baseload, so they switch on and they have a fairly straightforward curve on the grid. So they are excellent users of the grid. So very predictable. So we are sort of like no, they most of the equipment is always at the same level, and if you average it out, you already see that batches are being processed in the evening, so there it levels it out, and it's and these larger data centers, for instance, for Google, are now being the equipment is far more expensive than the power being used also. So if you do not use the equipment well and efficiently, you're wasting a lot of money. So what you see is that just like a supercomputer of a large university, that is booked 24/7. So it's still, if you look at, for instance, if you build a data center, a large data center, it's like 150 million to build the facility, the power, the cooling. It's around 800 million to put the IT equipment in, and the power is like 1 million a year, something like that. So compared to actually the equipment, it's nothing. And therefore, it's better to utilize the equipment far better than to not do that. And that creates a stable load.
If you think from a central large is bigger is better mindset, but if you're going to have a local data center with local power production, with smaller production, then it's I think it's more efficient for the whole of the system to get that more adapted to what the local production of local energy is. So yes, definitely the case for the larger facilities.
A local hospital. So a local hospital, well, they cannot follow the sun. If there's a patient, you need to have his file. So if a data center cannot decide that, and they have a lot of, for instance, a local data center supports local companies, which is the local government, the local hospitals, the local police.
So
cannot
so
follow the sun in that.
well, in usage, yes. So that then it comes down to not the data center, but the end users of the facilities.
And if I may add, because we're all thinking about the data centers, but actually we have hyperscalers, we have co-location, so that's data centers where several companies are within, and we have on-premise. On-premise are just the data centers within our own companies, universities, and so on. So we need to rethink the larger the hyperscalers and the co-location data centers are very, very efficient in the way of operating, as Stijn mentioned. But we also need to think of, should we put everything in the cloud, or what do we keep on premise, or how do we invest there? So which data do we put in the hyperscalers and in co-location, and what do we do on premise and with sustainable energy from the source locally? This kind of thinking, and it's not all your compute load needs to be, if a patient is screaming, we need to have the data there. But of course, if you have a large research and it needs to do this compute load, you can steer it. You can also say, well, we'll just put this in the evening or in the night when we have more energy, then we let it run between 4 and 9. So it's not one or the other, it's all of this is true, and we all need to think about it in every aspect, on the supply side and on the demand side.
Real life is complex. That's basically the conclusion.
Of course.
Yeah. I am going to, given the time and the reason, we've only covered 2 statements in our preparation. We have just room for one more, and I just want to check, what was the last one we're going to discuss here?
Yeah, I think this is really a little bit what is the twin transition. So we are in this sustainable transition where we really need to take care of energy. And it's now we've talked a lot this hour about energy, but it's also, I was really happy and in the front that you raised also water, plastics, but also what we forget for all these hardware, for digital technologies, we need what Stijn also said. These are data centers, metal, as they call it in the data center. Metal, it's IT hardware. It's being produced not here in the Netherlands. It's produced on different locations in the world, and it uses a lot of critical materials. And then it needs to be produced. It needs to be transported here. So 80% of the footprint, I know, of digital technologies is in the production and in the transport. So from hardware, it's not in the usage, because the energy use it's very efficient. The only problem is that we don't have enough energy. That's for the hardware side. So, and on the other hand, well, we are in this world where we need to take care of our world, and we know we have spatial issues. We don't have enough energy. We don't have enough water. We need to take care of biodiversity. We don't have enough access to critical materials. So we have a lot of issues there, actually. And on the other hand, we have technology and digitalization, which is, it does have a footprint. We need to think about it, but it's also part of our solutions. Digital technologies and AI can also help. It will help to detect biodiversity. It will help to detect also to clean up data. And there are a lot of things where it can help. So we need to lean in, step in, use it, think about it, and also think about our infrastructure wisely. That's what
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, given time, I'd like to ask you to brief your statement.
a closing statement.
Yeah.
Well, in a room full of future policymakers, I think it's policy is good, and I think if you look at, for instance, the Netherlands case, we have had very strict environmental laws, and it created a very efficient industry. So there was a lot of talk with policymakers, and but it created also a stick. And that helped to improve, and that's what you need in terms of policy. On the other hand, we are facing now a couple of very large transitions. We're facing AI that is coming, that has become geopolitical. Europe is being passed by a lot of investors because it's too difficult with too much regulation. And I think that whenever you have regulation and policies, you need to think first, what is the goal of the rules and regulation? If we want to, just like the safe havens where you can experiment, where you can do things, because there are no regulations, you can simply go on target straight away. I think that is also always very important. In a very complex, heavily regulated market, there is no room, and we need to have room to make the turn. So, yeah, my statement is sort of like, always keep in mind what your goal is, and have regulation focus on that, because regulation is not bad, but it needs to also service the goal.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Well, from a grid operator perspective, as I mentioned in the beginning, we need to build, but it's simply not enough. So we really need data to make better use of the existing cables and the existing grid. And to do so, we need data, and we need to be able to share data. So we need standardization, we need requirements, etc., to be able to share data, not only with our other grid operators, but also with local governments, with the market, with consumers, with businesses. So that's my calling out to create standardization, to be able to share data.
Actually, what you're stating is that digital transition, that twin transition, could be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I wanted to close with the fact that I embrace what Karen is saying. So let's all use digitalization and all the beautiful things that it brings to us for the greater good. So for the issues that we need to address, and one of those issues is the energy transition and how we can optimize that as good as possible.
Thank you. Claire, Inge, Stijn, Karen, thank you for your contribution. Hopefully you all got an insight what's happening, I would say, on shop level. What are the issues we need to talk about?